There we go. Well, I'm sorry. Less than 5 minutes to go through this. All right. So, some things to keep in mind that we've learned so far today is that an acid is a proton donor. Acids, proton donor. So they give that off in solutions. Bases, on the other hand, and I'm trying to color code it with the colors you guys would see with acids and bases when you use a universal indicator. It is a proton acceptor. Now, from that experiment, you guys would have found that the sodium hydroxide and the ammonia were both bases, and you found that the acidic, sulfuric, and hydrochloric are all acids. Now, the important question that we need to think about is ranking. So which one was the strongest of the acids? It was the sulfuric. So H2SO4. What came next? Rough idea. Was hydrochloric. And then the weakest one was the acidic acid, which might have gone different to what you guys had thought, which is good because I want to propose a common misconception. So there's a common misconception that you count the number of hydrogens and that's going to be then the strength of the acid. However, you have to keep in mind whether or not that acid fully dissociates. So dissociates means fully breaks apart. Sulfuric acid does fully dissociate. It releases 2 hydrogen ions plus a sulfate. So that's 2. Hydrochloric only has 1. So that's why it is slightly weaker than the sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid releases 2. Now, a lot of you guys looked at this and you thought with ethanoic acid, oh, it must release 4 hydrogens because there's 4 hydrogens there. That is not the case. It only releases this one on the end, because this is a carboxylic acid, and this is not going to fully dissociate. So we are going to do a reversible reaction. So we're going to do a double-sided arrow. You can either do it that way, or you can do it that way. That's also fine as well. But what we're trying to communicate is that this acid doesn't fully dissociate. Since it doesn't fully dissociate, it doesn't release 100% of its hydrogen ions. So it will release the hydrogen ion, but it may only release like 10% of the hydrogen ions that it can. So even though these two might be at the same concentration and they both release 1 hydrogen ion, this one isn't going to fully dissociate. So that's why acids have different strengths. That's why ethanoic acid is basically what we find in vinegar, and that's why we can eat it. It's not as strong. All right, bases, when we're thinking about the sodium hydroxide, it did this. And that OH here is what's going to be the proton acceptor. So this here can combine with the hydrogen ion forming water. So it's specifically this component, the hydroxide, that's making something a base. With ammonia, it is a weak base. If you guys remember from last year when we did ion identification, we talked about ammonia and how it can form hydroxide ions. So that's why that one's a weak base. So this guy here is our base. It accepts the proton from the water and then producing hydroxide as the product. Are we okay with that so far? So those are acids and bases, and that's what we can decide for the strengths and weaknesses. Try to decide. Okay, I'll just be quick. So something to keep in mind when we are talking about acids and bases is the other thing is that we have things that are called buffers. And buffers are a way for us to make sure that we don't have change in pH. It's like a safety measure. So in order to make a buffer, it needs either an acid and its conjugate base, or it needs a base and its conjugate acid. So what do I mean by that? So if we wanted something that was an acid, sorry, this is a base here, because that's a proton donor, and then I need the conjugate acid, and the conjugate acid would be this here, because that's going to donate the hydrogen ions. So we're talking about a pair. When we're talking about ocean acidification in particular, we have bicarbonate and carbonate as our acid and our conjugate base pair. So that's part of the ocean acidification equation. These two are in the ocean, and these two will balance the pH of the ocean because of its presence. So for example, if I have a lot of acid being added to my ocean, it forces the reaction to go in reverse to neutralize it, and so the pH stays the same. If I have a lot of base in the ocean, so not a lot of hydrogen ions, it forces it to go forward to release more hydrogen ions to keep the pH of the ocean the same. The problem we are running into with ocean acidification is we are running out of carbonate, and thus we are not neutralizing it anymore. Or sorry, we're not neutralizing the acid anymore. So that's why the pH of the ocean is lowering. Cool? All right, that's it. Sorry for keeping you guys. I will scan that. I hope that makes sense.